This is training video number 16 by LCE Graphics. You can reach us online at www.lcegraphics.com or call us toll free 1-800-634-2176. This is what we call our Get Acquainted video, and this is to help the operator understand more about the Duplo Collator DC10000, what all the buttons, knobs, and all the levers do, and some tips about the machine as well. What we're going to start out with is the lift unit. The lift unit is a conveyor that takes a set out of the collator and delivers it into whatever attachment you're running, stacker, booklet maker, etc. First, you have your two exit rollers right here, which are very important. They basically push the booklet into the booklet maker and or the stacker. These have weights that you can put on here. Right now the weights aren't on there. For light stock, everyday booklets you don't need them, but for heavy stock and also like thick booklets, like over 10 signatures of coated paper, it's important to have that weight on there. This is your exit sensor. What this does, it senses the booklet or the set as it leaves the lift unit. That tells the collator, yes, the set has left the lift unit and now it's in the booklet maker. And that's how the collator keeps track of where the booklet is. And if it doesn't pass this sensor, it's going to show a jam in the conveyor or delivery. Right here where you see delivery, that light will light up and tell you there's a problem. Somewhere the set got jammed or didn't get sensed between the exit of the collator and the exit of the LUH. This is your conveyor drive unit. These are a set of drive rollers that go on top of the belts, and these are all spring loaded, and they help advance the booklet through the conveyor into the whatever attachment you're running. You have a sensor right here, which is called a reed switch, and here's the magnet that triggers it. If this is up, you'll get that light that you see right there. Where it says door, it'll show door, and that means that this switch or this lever is up rather, and that's one of them. There are two door safeties. There's this one here, then there's also the one on the gate for the delivery belts. This gate unsnaps down here at the bottom. As you can see, when I open that, you also get a door symbol. So if you get a door on the collator, it's one of, if you have a twin tower, it's one of four places. There where I showed you on the delivery exit roller, on the conveyor of the first tower, conveyor of the second tower, or the transfer unit. There is also a door switch on the conveyor of the transfer conveyor. So you have those four that will show up a door. Now, if this tower here shows a door switch, it'll show up on your back tower as a problem if this one is open. So that's what those do. Now, the next thing is the collator exit sensor. Right there at the beginning of the lift unit, you see this sensor right here that I'm pointing to. That's your set exit sensor. What that does is tells the collator that the set has exited the conveyor of the collator. That means that the set has completely left the collator. So if you have a jam on delivery, it could be there or it could be up front where we showed you the sensor earlier. And these are your delivery rollers. They ride on top of the belt and help that booklet make that bend coming into the lift unit. And this is your delivery conveyor. This has belts on the inside with spring-loaded rollers that help deliver the sheets as they come out of each one of the bins. Now on the tower control unit, the first thing you have here is a speed. Plus, anytime you start the tower up, it's always going to start out at top speed. If you want to change the speed, you go from shift, speed, you see how it goes down to the minimum, and then back to the maximum. So you push shift, and right here where it says speed, and that's how you change the speed. Now, you can't do that while it's running. You can only change the speed when it's stopped. Now, the next one to the left, number 2, that's called overlap. Now, overlap is the shingling of the set. When the set comes out of a collator, it's like stepped back, spaced. They're not all perfectly jogged. And as you can see here on overlap, you have minimum. So we're going to change overlap. Next step up, next, and then maximum overlap means that your set's going to be spaced out even more. Back to minimum. The next thing is your program. You have your auto program, 5-bin, 10-bin, alt all, and alt cover. Now, to change the program, you push shift 3, which is your program. Now you're in 5-bin, now 10-bin, now alt and alt cover, and back to auto. Now, in this video, I'm not going to try to explain that whole thing, but in the manual, it shows you exactly what all those programs are, and we have other videos explaining that. Then you have block mode. Now, what is block mode? Well, if you notice on your block select, you have A, B, C, D, E, F. A and B are your first two towers. If you have a twin tower system like this one is, the first tower would be A, the second tower would be B. And if you'll notice, A and B are split into fours. One top, one bottom, one top, one bottom. That's 5 bins on the top, 5 bins on the bottom. So by selecting block mode, let's say for example you have a collating job that's 8 signatures. Well, by selecting block mode, splitting the collator in half, see, going to half, now I've selected tower A. So what I can do is load both towers, A and B, and then what will happen is as soon as the last sheet is fed off tower A, you can switch back automatically to tower B and continue running. And then of course you can load tower A while you're running tower B, and that way you increase your productivity by eliminating load time. Now, if on one tower, say for example you have a job that's 5 signatures or sheets or less, then you can split the block into 4, which you can see 1/4. Now you have the block at the bottom, so that means you're going to start out loading 5 on the bottom, 5 on top. It'll start feeding the 5 on the bottom, and then when it feeds the last sheet, shift to the top and start feeding that 5. Or you can, on the next button 5 is block select. You can actually select which block you start with. Like by pushing block select, I select to start with block A, which would be the top of the collator. Or I can select block the bottom on B, or the top on B. So you see, I can, by switching back and forth, I can select which one of the 5 signature blocks I want to start with on each collator. Okay, now I'm going to get out of block mode. Now you can see both lights are lit up. Now you have the exit option. Now, the exit option only helps you if you have a rear exit stacker or a rear exit jogger. To select rear exit, you go Shift 6, see exit option, watch what happens. Oh, I don't have a stacker plugged in the back, so I'm not able to shift. Without the stacker plugged into the back tower, you can't shift to exit option back. Okay, so anyway, that's how you do it. Shift to exit option back, exit option 6, and it'll change. Of course, it always gives you a double beep when there's something that isn't right. So anyway, that's a good feature. The next item is cover insert. Now, what that is say for example you're collating a job, and every 15 sheets you want to insert a slip sheet of say a pink sheet or something, so you can differentiate between those sets of 15. You can select cover insert 1 or 2, and what that'll do, you set quantity like 100, it'll slip in a slip sheet, or however you want to set that. The manual has more detailed information on that. This is your keypad, and this has 1 through 0. It has here for clear, and this of course is your shift key for changing into different programs. If you want to shift back up, what that'll do is that'll reverse the units. The next thing is your reset button. Now what reset does is that's how you set all your sensors on the tower. When you're starting out a new job, you push reset, and the unit will start running, raise up the bins that you've selected, paper, and reset, feed one set, and calibrate all your sensors. At that point, you're ready to go. Jog, the jog button, when you push the jog button, it just rotates the collator. And that's just designed to clear a set in case there's a set, the collator shut off with a set in the middle somewhere or in the conveyor. And finally, the bin switch. When you push the bin switch, your bins go up or down. That raises the bins, and that lowers them. All right, of course, here you have your stop button and your start button. Now we're going to start with the top. Here you have the door light. When that one lights up, we already discussed what that means. You have one of your gates or door is open. Empty means that one of the bins is empty, ran out of paper. And then down here, it'll show you which bin. Like say, it'll say bin 4, empty. Feed problem means that you had a misfeed, either fed a double or missed a sheet. A delivery light coming on means that somewhere from the time the sheet left the bins till it came out of the lift unit, the sheet is jammed. It didn't get there. The bottom you have here, you have a light at the rear which tells you there's a problem with the rear exit. And then you have a light here that tells you there's a problem with the booklet maker or the stacker. So if there's a jam in the booklet maker, this light will light up, the collator will shut off and not run. Now here you have your indicators. This is a symbol of the bin, and this is bins 1 through 10. Those will light up to tell you what bins have paper in them. Then you have this red circle with little lines around it, which means red flashing. Then you have an orange circle with little lines around it, which means orange flashing. And then you have red circle, which means just steady light. So if you have a red flashing light, it means you fed a double, and it tells you which bin did that. If you have an orange flashing light, that means you missed a sheet. See the dotted line? That means miss, and it'll tell you which bin missed. And if you have a jam, it means that the sheet left the bin but didn't get down the conveyor, and it'll show you which bin is jammed. The next thing is setting your sensors. Right here, each one of these switches controls the sensors. If you set it to the off position, that turns your doubles detection off. If that bin feeds a double, it will not let you know. It'll not stop the collator. It'll just continue running. Switch to the top. If you see the two lines, you have a thin line and a thick line. The thin line means thin paper, you know, like 50-pound offset, 60-pound offset, 70-pound coated, things like that, your regular coated papers. And then your bottom thick line, as you can see that, position 3, that's heavy stock, like 10-point chrome coat, 90-pound index cover, anything with more opacity. So this is based on the opacity of the sheet that determines which way you set that. It's depending on the opacity of the sheet. Now you have the dip switches. Now this is not something we're going to go into in this video, but you have dip switch 1, 2, 3, and 4. And in your manual it tells you what each dip switch is for and what each toggle. So you have dip switch number 1, toggles 1 through 6. The toggles are the tiny little switches in there. And these are programming switches, so it's not something to be messed with if you don't know what you're doing. Read the manual or call us and ask us. We'll be more than happy to explain that to you. It's better to know before you do something that can cause you some serious problems down the road. Okay, now the towers themselves. What we're going to do is we're going to show the bins and the settings and adjustments on the bins. For the DC10000S. Okay? Now we're going to raise the bins up so you can see everything there. Those two rollers you see in the center of your screen, those are your upper eject rollers. And then underneath those, I'm going to try to show them the best that I can here. You see the white rollers right in the center of your screen, right underneath the black rollers. Those are your lower eject rollers. The way the system works is a sucker foot picks up the sheet, lifts it up, and then the bottom roller, eject roller, comes up, grabs the top roller, and inserts the sheet. And that's how your Duplo system operates. Now, on each one of these bins, you're going to see these white stoppers right there, if you can see them in your picture. They're little white stoppers right in the center of your screen. And they have little springs on them. What those do is those are your double sheet eliminators. You can see them better underneath here. Right behind each sucker foot there's a stopper. What that does, it keeps the sucker foot from bottoming out too much on the paper stack. Like if you're feeding doubles on thin paper, like 50-pound offset or 60-pound offset or 20-pound bond, you can adjust these stoppers down lower or higher to allow the suckers not to pick up doubles. And it's actually a double elimination feature. And you can see the rubber suckers on each one of the bins there. Now on the top of each sucker tube you have a valve. If you'll notice, it's right in front of that white stopper adjustment. It's a little valve. Now when you pull the valve towards you, it turns the bin off, or turns that sucker off rather. When you push it away from you, it turns it on. So you can see that that one on the outside is turned off right now, but the one next to it is turned on. And you can always refer to your manual to explain how that is set. Now here on the vacuum tube itself, you have the adjustment for bleeding off the vacuum. So what happens is, because you have a central pump on these collators, sometimes you have to turn the vacuum up, like if you're running a heavy cover. But then it might give you trouble, because then the excess vacuum or the extra vacuum will cause it to feed doubles on the other bins. And you just simply bleed them off by sliding your bleed off collar away. And I see you have 3 holes, 2 holes, 1 hole, and that bleeds the vacuum off to that bin. Sometimes on some stocks you have to bleed off the vacuum a little bit, or it'll just feed doubles and drive you crazy. Now the next adjustment is this little knob right here. What that is that adjusts the height of your sucker. In other words, if you, as you turn the screw in, it raises the sucker foot up. See it? See the clearance there underneath the paper? See as I raise the sucker up? Okay. Now, if you understand anything about sheet fed presses, you know when you're feeding doubles, you lower the stack so that the paper is you have clearance between your sucker foot and your paper. It's the same principle here. If you're feeding doubles, then you need to raise the sucker foot up a little bit in this position. And what that does is allows a little bit of clearance between the sucker foot and the paper, so that you can aerate the sheet a little bit better. This arm right here that you see, it's got a foam rubber covering on it. That's your bail bar. What that does is sense the height of the pile, and it also traps the air. When that bar's down, when the collator's running, it has 2 blasts of air. One blast of air blasts with the bar down, which separates the sheets right when the suckers are picking them up, so that it helps eliminate doubles. And then the bar raises up and the blower blows again. And what that second blow does is blow air underneath the sheet to separate the paper. It's really a great system. Now over here on the far right hand side, on the non-op side, you'll see the adjustment for your bin tension. Now what that does is adjust the spring tension of the bin itself. And position 2 is where most things are going to run. I rarely ever use position 1, except maybe on NCR or something that's really porous or real thin. Position 3 is what you use for things like 80-pound coated, 100-pound coated, and your cover stock, because what that does is it reduces the amount of pressure that the bin puts on the bail bar when it comes up, and allows the sheets to be aerated better. So you run a position 2 for most of your stock jobs, and position 3 for covers or heavy stock. Now on the collator itself, you have different plugs for different things. This top plug is only for the lift unit conveyor and or the transfer conveyor. This bottom plug is only for the attachments. This is where you plug in a stacker, a booklet maker, whatever attachment you're going to use. This receptacle is only used for the stacker. It's not a heavy enough amperage. You notice it says 3 amps. It's not heavy enough amperage for the booklet maker, but you can plug your stacker in there if you like, if you're running a stacker. This plug right here, or receptacle, is for the optional remote control unit. You have an optional remote control with these machines that you can get that will actually allow you to run the collator and from the booklet maker, from the trimmer. So you plug that in right there. On the other side of the collator, you have another plug which says pump, and that's where your pump plugs in. Now, on the top 2 bins and the bottom 2 bins, you'll see this adjustment. It's got a thick line and a thin line, and arrows going in both directions. Now what that is, on the 2 top bins and the 2 bottom bins, Duplo put an adjustable spring tension on that controls the spring tension on the bottom eject rollers, so that when they come up, they're spring loaded. And what that does is it creates more pressure, like when you're feeding a heavy cover. You may find you have to use those. So don't be surprised if you have to use, move that adjustment. And it explains in the manual how to do it. But you go in there with a long handle 3mm Allen wrench, and you'll see the screw in there, and you turn it one way for more tension, another way for less. And on the diagram it shows one way for a thin line, which always means a thin stock with Duplo, and a thick line means heavy stock. I've tried to cover most of the things that I can think of. Just to give you like a quick reference on the collator, so you kind of familiarize the operator with all the different controls and buttons. But you know, read the manual, take some time to familiarize yourself with the machine before you start running it. I know that runs counter to what many do today, where they just start running the machine and push things and turn things until they figure things out. Well, that may be one method, but I prefer the, you know, the tried and true method of reading the manual and learning what each button does. Now, one thing good about Duplo is they have a page on every manual for the booklet maker, the trimmer, and the collator that has a diagram of your touchpad, tells you what each button is for and what it does. And that's a great feature. If you have any questions, you can always call us, 1-800-634-2176, or visit us on the web at lcegraphics.com. Thank you.